Since the dawn of history, man's goal has been to create a society free from drudgery, hunger, and disease, not only for himself, but as a legacy to pass on to his children. But only after the founding of our free society was the atmosphere created in which he could reach his goal. He worked and planned, built and innovated and grew. Eventually, he was able to provide not only the necessities of life for himself and his children, but he could dream of acquiring some of the luxuries as well. Has man's dream of his children's future ended in a nightmare? The end of World War II found America up from the depths of depression to the most affluent society known in history. Business was booming. To capture these ready dollars, Madison Avenue turned to psychologists to analyze what motivated people to buy. Their studies revealed not only what motivated people, but techniques that could be used to create new desires in people, to change the philosophies of security and saving to the philosophy of spending. Techniques were developed to attach a stigma to the old or the used, to shame people into buying, and to glorify the new and the different, whether it had quality or not. It became apparent that for the first time, American youth had plenty of money also, and motivational research revealed that the influence of what has been called progressive education had produced a generation of youngsters, many of whom were more concerned with being accepted by groups their own age than they were with their own individualism. Among this generation of susceptible youngsters, fads came in epidemic proportions. The mass media helped to create the fads, and profits poured in for those merchandisers who successfully capitalized on the fads. Parents had learned from Dr. Spock, and youth had learned from progressive education. They conformed. They went from one fad to the next, and they spent their dollars. One of the most potent forces in leading youth in and out of these mass behavior patterns was music. There was the Zoot Suiter and his boogie-woogie, then bebop, leather jackets, ducktails, the Ivy Leaguer and cool jazz, the surfer's rock and roll, twist, the froog, and now the mod look, and folk rock, to name just a few. The technique of combining music with mass merchandising brought near total control of the purchasing habits of a whole generation. Many record companies slipped money to obliging disc jockeys for their repetitious playing of specific records. For youngsters were so easily influenced that if the record was being played frequently on the radio, and if they were told it was a hit, they would buy the record. Since merchandisers had demonstrated time after time that music could change the buying habits, clothing styles, and behavior patterns of youth, others concluded that music could be used to mold their philosophy, and new kinds of influence could be worked by putting a message into song lyrics. In recent years, we have seen the songs Teeny Weeny Polka Dot Bikini revolutionize teenage swimwear, and Don't Step on My Blue Suede Shoes create a new footwear style. But moving from fashions to popularizing ideas. The Ticky-Tack song, written by identified communist Malvina Reynolds, pictured America as a martini-drinking population in an assembly line rut. And We Shall Overcome, written by identified communist Pete Seeger, was inspirational to civil rights marches, campus demonstrations, and riots all over the nation. Public acceptance of such messages by music gave birth to still another music fad, the protest song. Repetitious playing of these protest songs has brought a curious group of singers into national prominence. Joan Baez, who believes the Star-Spangled Banner is trash. Phil Ochs and his Draft Dodger Rag, and Len Chandler with his hit Beans in My Ears. Bob Dylan, according to CBS Vice President Clyde Davis, is the leading cultural force among young people today. This is the same Bob Dylan whose recordings "The Times Are Changing" made questioning the American concept of standards the in thing to do, and "Rainy Day Woman," which any junkie knows is a marijuana cigarette, are best sellers with hundreds of thousands of young record buyers. Bob Dylan was an obscure songwriter until he signed a contract with Columbia Records. The man responsible for Dylan's contract at Columbia was John Hammond. It isn't surprising that John Hammond would be interested in Dylan's brand of culture, for Mr. Hammond, according to official United States government records, has made himself a party to at least 7 communist fronts. In order for Dylan and his curious band of contemporaries to so blatantly deliver their revolutionary and anti-society messages to the younger generation, parents had to be kept unaware. It was necessary for the music makers to establish a language easily understood by the youths, but foreign to the parents. Your first chance: turn on any rock and roll radio station in any city and listen closely. The language in the song lyrics combines the slang of prostitutes, drug addicts, con artists, and pool hustlers with the jargon of beatniks. As the language caught on, the people who understood it were hip, and youths who adopted the jargon for their own use became known as hippies or hipsters. Choice of the word hip was a boon for the message movers because it replaced the negative image of the beatnik with a more positive image. If you were hip, you were in. With parents unable to understand the language and unaware of the intent, message movers behind the coming drug fad had their own electronic pipeline to the youngsters. They were with them more than the parents were, at the beach, in the bedroom, in the car, walking to school. Across the nation, with literally thousands of radio stations spinning records such as 8 Miles High, Rainy Day Woman, Pipe Dream, or the Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows, all which can be interpreted as describing the use and effects of LSD and marijuana, drug addiction has increased sharply, jumping 600% in areas of Southern California alone. To the drug-using hippies, the mesmerizing eye is symbolic. It relates to the hallucinatory state produced by LSD, which enables the drug user to see things he believes others cannot. Ads such as this, which feature the symbolic, mesmerizing eye, seem to have the greatest appeal to the in group. Helping music get the drug message through to American youth, a network of underground newspapers has sprung up across the country. Tied together by an organized underground press service, the network already boasts of a circulation over 250,000. The Berkeley Barb is typical of these publications. A parent seeing this front page might shrug off the cartoon as perhaps just trashy. But to a hippie, it means the third all-seeing eye of the LSD user. A user on an LSD trip is supposed to feel a oneness with the world. Thus the girl with the flowers. The Barb is owned by 51-year-old bearded beatnik Max Scherer. His paper is a classic example of the political plus sexual propaganda. Using a Lenny Bruce style, it diabolically attacks every standard of American society. And in the vernacular of the hipster, anyone who rejects the garbage in this paper just isn't hip. A popular part in the underground paper is this section called the unclassified advertising, which features such blatant sexual solicitations as lonely gay male student, 30, employed nights, seeks gay or bi guy, 18 to 29, to share his cheap furnished room near LACC, rent-free, should be hip or hippie type. Help, help. Attractive young girl wants to blow home soon. Real swinger needs financial help to move to strip. I am selling some very unusual nude pics of myself to finance my move. As I get to know you better, pics get better. Male disciple, 30, pleasant and eager, seeking aggressive, domineering female disciplinarian. Repeat, female only. From all directions, youngsters are on the receiving end of a barrage of obscenities and subversive material by the printed word, and of double entendre and off-color lyrics and music. What's the result? Simply that homosexuality, wife-swapping, masochism, and premarital relations are made to appear to be as natural as a child's craving for ice cream. It is small wonder, then, that young hippies are attracted to organizations like the Sexual Freedom League, headed by Jefferson Polland, who is also a member of the International Workers of the World, one of the oldest communist fronts in America. To understand how degenerate the sexual freedom clubs are, one has only to read such articles as this in the Berkeley Gazette community paper, which describes a police raid on a club party. This one was held in an old house on Berkeley's Telegraph Avenue, directly across from Willard Junior High School. The story reports that the two youths last week said they heard about the party several weeks ago and paid $1 each upon entering. They said they were told at the door there is plenty of liquor inside and it is all free. Their first encounter was with a woman who wore nothing but a blouse and was being chased by several nude males. The two decided to go upstairs to get away from the nudes, they told police. They opened a door to find a bedroom with wall-to-wall mattresses over which several small infants crawled. A couple was engaged in intercourse, they said, oblivious to the children in the room. When the 16-year-old girl came out of an upstairs bathroom, she was accosted by several nude males, she said. The boy and girl said there also appeared to be homosexual activities. This incident is not a unique or isolated situation, but is often encountered during routine police investigations. After a while, sex for the young hippie fails to provide the desired stimulus, and he is told he is suffering from sexual inhibitions. To eliminate this, he is advised to turn to grass, weed, pot, tea, or rainy day woman, each of which simply means marijuana. The thrill of marijuana is short-lived, and the hippie is then advised to drop acid and vibrate, hipster language to describe sexual relations while under the influence of LSD. Lysergic acid, or LSD, is sending many youngsters over the brink and into psychoneurotic institutions from which many of them may never return. To those who do not go over the brink with LSD, the next narcotic in drug escalation is speed, or crystals, hip names for the dangerous drug methadone. This drug is mainlined, injected into the main veins of the body. But as any real hipster knows, you're not really grooving until you've tried smack. What this means in plain language is that to drug users, heroin is still the ultimate. This is an ad for Mellow Yellow, made from the scrapings of banana peels. Although the Federal Food and Drug Commission stated that there are no traces of any harmful drugs in these scrapings, Mellow Yellow plays an important part in the drug picture. Most young people know of the tragic after effects and thus have a psychological barrier against taking drugs. But the naive, inexperienced youth, eager to enter the much publicized world of the hippies, can send for his own Mellow Yellow instructions to experiment with. He experiences no effects from it, but he thinks he is taking drugs. And once the barrier is breached, it is easy to substitute the real thing for Mellow Yellow. The legal representative for the promoters of Mellow Yellow is Hallinan and Sons of San Francisco. Vincent Hallinan, the father, a millionaire Marxist and propagandist for Fidel Castro, is shown here attending a civil rights rally in San Francisco. But how does the tune-in, turn-on, and drop-out message get to the kids? Through record albums such as this one, manufactured by Epic Records, a subsidiary of CBS Incorporated. To comprehend the spreading growth of the hippie movement, let's look at a few examples. This is Ramparts Magazine, an expensive left-wing publication for the young pseudo-intellectual. Until recently, its Hate America gobbledygook was so obvious that the magazine was rejected by the majority of college students. The magazine's mysteriously financed $1 million a year budget helped bring graphic arts recognition. But a circulation of only 74,000 by October 1966, even after a costly 2-year major advertising campaign. Apparently, it was the nationally ballyhooed riot of teeny boppers and hippies on the Sunset Strip which boosted Rampart's circulation. This exploitation of the new generation and other student-related muckraking stories shot Rampart's circulation to nearly 220,000 by March 1967, just 6 months later. Robert Scheer is managing editor of Ramparts. He is purported to be the most articulate spokesman of the New Left and is noted for his ability to motivate University of California at Berkeley radicals in carrying out their much-publicized demonstrations. When Scheer ran for Congress in November 1966, his campaign was run by Carl Blois, an admitted communist, a reporter for the communist newspaper People's World, and now its Washington, D.C. correspondent. The type of philosophy supported by Scheer has motivated other activists in the past, such as this fellow member of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. The Sunset Strip riot of young hippies and their teeny bopper idolizers focused national attention on the alarming increase in drug usage by young people. In April 1967, Caltech, home of the Jet Propulsion Lab, conducted a survey to determine how many of its student body were using drugs. 90% of the student body participated, and 20% admitted they were using drugs, the majority having just started within the last few months. It would appear that even some of our future scientists want to be hip. At Stanford University, we can see the influence of drugs by reading the words painted on this board. When the long hair of Stanford's New Left student body president David Harris was shaved by fun-loving fraternity boys, the New Left posted these signs all over the campus. The signs went uncontested by fraternity men who, in terms of the hipster vocabulary, blew their cool. A visit to San Francisco State College campus is like a journey into an opium den with its clientele plotting the overthrow of our government. The main hall of the college. It calls for volunteers to serve with the Viet Cong and to give medical aid to communists wounded by our American soldiers who are opposing their infiltration of South Vietnam. The slant of lectures at San Francisco State Experimental College must be interesting to hear when bulletin boards carry warnings like this against the FBI. As a result of the Sunset Strip riots, the hippies have become big business in TV programming. The programs, promised big audiences, are ready to capitalize on the degradation of youth. And drug advocates such as Dr. Timothy Leary, the former Harvard professor, will gladly tell nationwide audiences how to tune in, turn on, and drop out. And as long as his advice is taken by his audiences, but not by his public relations people, his lawyers, the major TV networks, or the national magazines that thrust him into national prominence, he'll continue to see gold rather than that psychedelic art on his personal trips. This profit to him, of course, is no solace to the parents of young drug users who have gone blind, or been committed to mental institutions, or become suicide statistics after following Dr. Leary's advice. Not only TV, but magazines, newspapers, and radio shows are cashing in on these social dropouts. They have found that a story on a young drug addict is an antidote for slipping circulation, and a picture of a hippie protesting the war in Vietnam is far more saleable to the public than a picture of a soldier dying to defend the hippie's right to protest. Popular on radio with the hippies is the rambling titled San Francisco, Be Sure to Wear Some Flowers in Your Hair. The lyrics go, all across the nation, such a strange vibration, people in motion. There's a whole generation with a new explanation, people in motion. If you come to San Francisco, summertime will be a love-in there. If that doesn't get the kids to run away, the flip side will. Hey, friend, wake up. Pick up a toothbrush and sneak down the stairway. You've got no reason you should stay. Hey, what's the difference if we don't come back? Who's going to miss us in a year or so? Nobody knows us or the things we've been thinking, so what's the difference if we go? The San Francisco song goes on to promise, you're going to meet some gentle people there. Let's look at some of these gentle people. In Berkeley, the international group of anarchist revolutionaries called the Provos will meet the flower children flocking there, feed them, and give them shelter and drugs. The Provos provide the setting for the love-ins the song refers to, every Sunday afternoon in Berkeley's City Hall Plaza, now known as Provo Park. Folk rock bands blast away while free soup is ladled, and runaways from across the nation frolic on the lawn, making ardent love oblivious to onlookers. Bill Miller, Berkeley revolutionist and filthy speech movement veteran, leads the local branch of the Provo International Organization. The Provos, which first appeared in Holland, define their goal as, "The Provotariat is made up of subversive elements that definitely provoke. Look out, bourgeoisie, we are on the march to demolish the world." Here, the same Bill Miller leads a demonstration in support of the communist Viet Cong. Other leaders shown here are Mrs. Robert Scheer, wife of Rampart's editor, and communist Steve Cherkos of the Red Chinese Aligned Progressive Labor Party. Across the bay in San Francisco, the gentle people who provide free food and shelter to runaways are Provo types who call themselves the Diggers. This name is derived from a group of communists in England who tried to establish communal living there. The Diggers are composed of a strange combination of anarchists, black power advocates, pacifists, Leary-type drug dropouts, and the San Francisco Mime Troupe, a group of amateur actors who have gained notoriety for their vulgar and obscene shows. Let us look at some of these flower children who flock by the thousands to San Francisco. These three leave a Digger headquarters located in the basement of the All Saints Episcopal Church in the center of the hippie slums. This same morning, they stole an expensive dog and sold it for $5. They talked to us about it freely. With the money, they bought speed, and when they get back to their pad, they'll inject the drug into their arms. The boy boasts of his recent bad conduct discharge from the Army for refusing to serve in Vietnam, and he has the date of his first LSD trip tattooed on the back of his hand. The girl in dark glasses was attracted to this Haight-Ashbury mecca for hippies from her home in Illinois. The pad they are entering is one of those provided free by the Diggers, and which San Francisco police cite as lures for runaway kids. 200 boys and girls like these are drawn every day to the Haight-Ashbury district alone, and hippie communities like this one are springing up throughout America. Sex and drugs are the two major interests of the hippie community, and venereal disease is one of its most serious problems, as evidenced by this ad in the Oracle Underground newspaper, which encourages kids to have a free checkup at 33 Hunt Street. Venereal disease isn't the only problem. A public health official commented, "Because of the crowded conditions under which the hippies live, we are finding a high percentage of infectious hepatitis. This disease is usually found in food contaminated by the urine and feces of an infected person. Other problems are body lice, scabies, and internal and external parasites." And synonymous with the hippie movement is Allen Ginsberg, the erotic poet and homosexual hangover from the Beat Generation. Here is Prophet Ginsberg attending a Get Out of Vietnam demonstration with communist Mike Lasky, communist Eston Simmons, communist William Sherman, communist Ray Marshall, and Jack Weinberg, member of the communist W.E.B. Du Bois Club and hero of the U.C. Sproul Hall invasion of 1964. Haight-Ashbury is like one big teenage Skid Row. Kids sit and lie in the streets and doorways, many of them high on drugs. An obsession with these youngsters is to dress as bizarre as possible. The big charge is to go to the Goodwill used clothing store, put on the clothes, and go into the streets to panhandle from the tourists. There is such a demand for merchandise catering to the hippie fad that local stores are selling out to enterprises coming in to capitalize on these drug-addicted kids. And the Gray Line tourist buses have run what is called a hippie hop, twice a day for out-of-towners to come and stare at these doped-up kids. A great tourist attraction is the Diggers' free feed every day at 4 o'clock. Small groups of the hippies show up for handouts, but the Diggers claim that soon 200,000 of these hippies will flock to San Francisco to take up this way of life. Another attraction is the Fillmore Auditorium dance put on by Bill Graham, originator of the Mime Troupe. Price of admission to the dance includes pillows for those hippies too high on drugs to stand up. A doctor is always in attendance to help the kids who freak out. That means those who have a bad LSD experience. When the dance is over, the sponsors go around waking up the kids to get them to go home. Some are so high on overdoses they have to be brought down with tranquilizers. If this doesn't work, they're taken to the hospital. The formula that hooks these kids is outlandish. It's the rallying cry of love with a dash of Hopi Indian ritual, some Buddhism, beatnik existentialism mixed with drugs. Here, a leader of the cult takes his followers to an anti-American demonstration. Here, doing his thing, is Charlie Brown Artman, disciple of Timothy Leary and high priest of an LSD cult in the Berkeley area. A speech of Artman's before a noon UC rally defending the public use of an obscene four-letter word was a spark that helped ignite the filthy speech movement. What gives momentum to the hippie movement, and who profits from this insanity? Here is the Anti-American Spring Mobilization March against the war in Vietnam, April 1967. The House Committee on Un-American Activities issued a report stating that this march was in control of communists. But this only enhanced the march for the hippies, because anything the committee would be against, the hippies would be for. The parade was dominated by hippies, but here and there, one would find distinguished-looking people like this impressive-looking gentleman waving the American flag, who happens to be Leon Wolfsey, former National Youth Director of the Communist Party and now an associate professor at the University of California at Berkeley. The communists obviously profited. Here you see communist writer Sam Kushner along with party member Steve Murdoch, both staff reporters for the People's World, and obviously thrilled by the 80,000 marchers that paraded up Market Street in San Francisco, furnishing valuable propaganda for the Communist Party. Here is communist photographer Harvey Richards, father of UC student activist Paul Richards, shooting movie film of the march. Investigators learned that thousands of feet of propaganda film left by jet that night for Hanoi. Providing guards for this curious group of demonstrators are the Citizens Alert Patrol from Watts, California. This group was originally formed after the Watts riots by a group of leftist organizations to follow police and observe so-called police brutality. The San Francisco headquarters for the Citizens Alert Patrol is in Glide Memorial Church at Ellis and Taylor, where such wild hippie happenings have taken place that the police have had to raid the church on numerous occasions. The annual budget of this church is $385,000, with 5 full-time clergymen and 14 employees on the staff. This is also the headquarters for the Glide Foundation, worth $7.5 million, and whose director is Reverend Donald Kuhn, also founder and supporter of the Council for Religion and the Homosexual. The fact that left-wing radicals could pack Kezar Stadium with 65,000 people, as shown in the propaganda films, must have a demoralizing impact on our men in Vietnam. Even though the event included several prominent Negro names among the speakers, such as Julian Bond and Mrs. Martin Luther King, few Negroes participated in the demonstration. The most popular book sold to hippies at this infamous demonstration was Mao Zedong's Red Guard Manual. The man looking at our camera is J. Frank, member of the Communist Progressive Labor Party, which is calling for blood in our streets now. This man is dressed in the uniform of the Chinese Red Guard and is also a member of the Communist Party, Marxist-Leninist from Watts, California, and is also selling the popular Little Red Book. Among many young Americans, being defiantly anti-American is strictly in vogue. This young girl sitting in the stands is dressed in the highest fashion. She's wrapped in an American flag, violating both it and her country. The girl standing next to her is a well-known New Left activist, Arlie Tim. And next to her, the progressive labor communist publication, Spark, is being sold by a young man dedicated to the overthrow of our government. Buttons are big business among the hippies. One of the fastest sellers to these customers who claim they are the love generation was a button that read, "Lee Harvey Oswald, where are you now that we need you?" And for those who wanted to get the party line direct from Moscow via Communist Party USA, this booth sells subscriptions to the Communist People's World. While the communists might not be the instigators of the hippie movement, like the dope pushers, the pornography publishers, the filthy record makers, the money-hungry TV sponsors, and even the anti-American lapel button manufacturers, they're cashing in for their own special benefits from the debasement of American youth. Responsibility for this debasement lies in many places. First, in the overly permissive upbringing of our youngsters and the progressive education they were subjected to, making them political and emotional cripples. Part of the blame lies with greedy politicians who, seeing that soon 52% of Americans will be in the under 25 age group, coddle, cater to, and exploit these young people. But guiltiest of all are the parents who don't want to see, who will not say no to their children even when the situation demands it, who, rather than risk losing their child's approval for a day or a week, would rather risk losing the child to drug addiction and moral corruption. Perhaps you haven't seen the Skid Row in which the hippies lived, the underground literature, or hippie riots. But you can turn on your radio, turn to the teenage music stations and listen for yourself, for this is the pipeline into every American home. Listen to the lyrics, decipher the language. You'll say, it couldn't mean that, but it does mean that. This is the steady diet of our young people, fed to them by radio, TV, records, underground papers, direct mail, magazines, street talk, and the in crowd. Not just in isolated areas, but given to American youth in towns and cities across the country. Parents complain that they aren't able to talk to their children. Well, someone is talking to them, and the children are listening and keeping time to what's being said and memorizing the words and singing them and dancing to them and reacting. Thousands are being drawn into this nightmare world of the hippies and become zombie-like vegetables. This is one fad that doesn't end tomorrow. These kids are hooked, most of them to stay, and thousands more are being taken in. In October 1965, the communists staged a demonstration at Berkeley, California, and shocked the nation by managing to attract 13,000 people. In April 1967, they brought in 80,000 people. How many will be there next time? It's your children who are the pawns in the game, and the solution is your responsibility. There are so many young people who have, so far, resisted this tragic onslaught. But how long can they continue to resist? Young America is the future America, and no nation with a generation of dope users can remain strong or even remain free.